Hello again. Today I wanted to talk about the forest. Why it is so wonderful, why I am so proud to burn wood, and why I love my wood stove. Anyway, this is beautiful too. They filmed Dad's Army here. There is no free lunch with home heating. Every fuel has an environmental cost. But wood, I believe, is about as good as it gets. The forest we're going into today is up over there. Really, really beautiful place. I've been wanting to make this video for quite a long time now, because I've felt that nobody seems to be speaking up for wood. Wood as heating fuel, that is. Big oil and nuclear, the other heating systems have vast promotional budgets, and I just don't see that wood has one. So in this video, let's have a look at the forest, the pros and cons of wood, and a very quick look at what the other options are. So this is our power station. Millions and millions of tiny green solar panels. The trees around me are producing something like 8-10 tons of wood per hectare per year. That's something like, it's about 3 tons an acre. Now that's really important, and the second important thing is that conifers put on timber faster than broadleaves, and then the next important thing is that within a forest, within our power station, all tree ages are represented. So we want the little tiny seedlings, and we want the waist-high saplings, then we want the pole stage, and then we want the mature trees. Now, in forestry, in British forestry anyway, when all age classes are represented in a forest so that timber can be produced in perpetuity, that is called normality. A very simple phrase for a very important concept. And it's not just us that needs wood, the wildlife need a lot of wood as well. So when we're harvesting, if we harvest say 80-90%, that's fine, and that will leave some to rot and some for woodpeckers and stuff. There's a dead tree up there behind me which reminds me of a story. When I was first a forest manager, and this is 40 years ago, I was keen to make a good impression, so I said to the men who worked in the woods on chainsaws, I want you to clear out all the dead wood, tidy up the forest. Anyway, they looked at me aghast and said, what about the woodpeckers? And I think, looking back, it's so nice that 40 years ago, the people who worked in the forest really cared about the wildlife long before it was fashionable. And there's another dead tree up over there as well. This is a lovely area. So let's head off up there now. I want to go through the many advantages of forest and therefore wood fuel. While looking at this wonderful forest, it's worth noting that here we have nearly achieved normality. We can harvest sustainably in perpetuity now. And while only a tiny proportion of the 67 million people that live in the UK use logs as part of their heating, it still helps. Every bit of electricity I don't need can go to somebody else. Or the fossil fuel can stay in the ground. and a little less nuclear waste is created. I said earlier that I'm really proud to heat my home with wood and have the forest as my power station. I was thinking about it earlier, and from what I can see there are something like 16 advantages to having wood fuel as your heating. I'm going to have a job to remember the whole list, but let's go through them. I'll probably fall over while I'm trying to do this, and if I do, I swear to you I'll keep it in the film. So, the first advantage is obviously that wood is completely renewable, and this is enormously important, we know that. The second one, I would see that it's in cycle carbon. People have pointed out to me that when we burn wood we're releasing carbon dioxide. Well, yes we are, but whether the tree is burnt or rots, you release the same carbon, but it doesn't actually matter because it's in cycle carbon. As opposed to fossilized carbon, which is hundreds of million years old. So let's keep the fossilized carbon in the ground and keep this carbon, beautiful as it is, recycling. Anyway, so what's the third one? I think the third one for me is wildlife. I've lived and worked in forests all of my life, and I think it's brilliant that our power station is absolutely teeming with wildlife. I don't think that would be the case in the others, particularly nuclear. God, we'll keep off that for a moment. The last, or not the last one, crikey, there are 16. The next one would be simply the beauty of it and well-being. That's another one. For me anyway, I really need water or forest if I want to sort of chill out, relax. I know that's quite fashionable at the minute, but it was always so. People have always loved to come out into a place like this. Again, I'll stop. Look at how beautiful this is. Other than fiddling about with the camera all the time, it's doing me a power of good to be out here. It really is. Okay, after that, I think the next one would be timber. That's pretty obvious. The next one, slightly less obvious, would be clean water. This forest that I'm walking through in total is about 84 square miles, and I know that the water beneath this forest is some of the cleanest in England because there's no artificial fertiliser, there's nothing else going down into the ground underneath me. Clean air, everybody knows clean air, that's another one. The millions of little solar panels above us are also filtering the air and cleaning it for us. Another one I would throw in that's not always mentioned is archaeology. The soils underneath me have never been farmed, they've never been ploughed, they've never had drains put through. So any archaeology beneath me is more protected than it would be under just any other, well, most other landscape systems. Right, what's next? The next one for me is it's easy maintenance. We all know what happens when other power stations go wrong, and that can be catastrophic. This one, again, look at it. This one doesn't go wrong. And in fact, if humans weren't here, it would be absolutely fine on its own. Sorry, I'm messing about now, but look at the sun coming down behind me. No, this is a very low maintenance power stations, and humans can come and go as they wish because the forest is fine without us, but I hope we can work with it. Next, food. I gather nuts, berries, fungi. I haven't gathered meat in a long time, but the forest provides food for humans and always has. No one else does that. Actually, I'm going to change hands now. This is quite heavy, my kit. Okay, talking of waste, we get wood ash, which in fact is so benign. There was once a huge industry in North America supplying people with wood ash as fertiliser. So it is a wonderful waste. Very few plants in the garden don't like it. If we compare that with coal ash waste, which has no goodness in it, and we don't even need to think about nuclear waste. Anyway, the waste product from this is wonderful. We can use it on agricultural fields, we can use it in our garden. It's so good. Okay, now I've found my tripod. Let's now go, to be fair, to give balance, now let's look at all the disadvantages. Now, the disadvantages of having a forest. I'm struggling here. I feel that there are 7 responsibilities that come with burning wood. The first is to make sure that your logs are harvested sustainably and, if possible, sourced locally. The second is to dry the wood down to at least 20% moisture content, but lower if possible. Next, your stove must be efficient, not an open fire and not some old smoky thing. You need a modern efficient stove to make sure you get the maximum heat energy from every log. Next is to learn to drive the stove. The airflow is critical. You are the carburetor, mixing fuel and air and making sure that the balance is right. Next, make sure no smoke comes back into the rooms. That's quite important, and again, just good technique will make sure that doesn't happen. Next, use the ash. Not huge, but why would we be throwing this fantastic fertilizer into landfill? And last, which is a constant with all the others, but I think insulation. Let's not burn any more wood than we have to. Insulate ourselves and insulate our homes. I've said that all heating fuels have an environmental cost and that there's no free lunch with any of them. So while I hate advertising that works on slagging off, insulting all other competitors, I think it's worth us having a quick look at the other heating fuel options. And why I say this is partly I keep being bombarded with TV advertising telling me how wonderfully clean electricity is, particularly, and it isn't. Something like 78% of electricity produced in the United States is from fossil fuels or nuclear, and the figure isn't so very different in the UK. Last time I looked it was 61%, and 8 to 10% of it spilt in transmission, lost in transmission. How can you say that that's clean? And I don't really even want to think about coal, oil and gas. The whole world is trying to reduce its reliance on fossil fuels. We know the story. And what about the other renewables? Well, they're great and they're our future, but let's remember, none of them are carbon neutral. The owls are hooting, time to go home. I would love to live long enough to see which new technology wins out to support the renewables. Fusion, hydrogen, it is so hard to tell just now. So for the time being, I'll be at peace with my fire.